This is Matt Baer. I'm the founder of Q4Launch. I'm excited that you are with us today as we talk about how to attract the Millennial Traveler. This is a subject that's close at our heart here at Q4Launch, so excited to kind of dive in. I know it's something a lot of us in the travel industry are talking about, so we're excited to share some ideas, some thoughts, some observations with you today. I know there's a lot of new faces with us, so thanks for registering. Glad that you guys are here. If this is your first webinar, welcome. Give you a little bit of introduction on who we are. If you've been with us many times before, I know there's a lot of seasoned veterans. Actually, some shout out to Dee, who was on one of the first webinars we did 3 years ago. So glad you're along for the ride. Glad 3 years later and probably 40 or 50 webinars later, you're still learning new things and finding new inspiration to apply into your business. That's really our hope as we invest a lot into education as a company, and hope you all benefit from that. So thanks for coming. Thanks for being here with us. If you're not familiar with Q4Launch, a little bit about us. We are a destination or a travel marketing company. We work exclusively with lodging properties in the travel industry, have customers from Hong Kong to Napa Valley and everywhere in between. Blessed to work with some beautiful destinations and beautiful properties around the world, and we are absolutely obsessed with travel. We've got maps all over our offices, and we talk quite a bit about about our customers, of course, but also just about where we dream to go. We have a company happy hour today, welcoming some new employees, and one of the questions we love to ask is, where's your favorite place to go in the world, or where's your favorite place you've been, and where's your favorite place you want to go? So we definitely have a passion for travel and are so blessed to get to work with so many of you. I know many of our customers are joining us on the webinar today as well, so glad you guys are here, and we love the opportunity to work with you. A little bit of housekeeping as we move along here. We will have presentations, or excuse me, we will have a copy of the presentation that will be emailed out. We will email out a recording of that. I know many of you email us when we're registering, so everyone who registered today will get a copy of this link to our YouTube channel. If you want to be the first to know that that's coming out, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Q4Launch. We'll be using the chat panel to answer questions today. Now, there's oftentimes a lot of questions about millennials, lots of jokes made about millennials. So if you're along for the ride, you can use that chat panel to ask questions. Feel free to put those in at any point. We'll circle back to them at the end of our time together today. At the same point, if you have any issues with audio or anything else, please let me know that in the chat panel so I can try to help address that as we move along here today. We're based in Charleston, South Carolina. I should have mentioned that when I introduced us. And as a part of that, we've got a kind of an epic rainstorm going on right now. So hopefully that doesn't impact us all at all here with connection and things like that. But being in Charleston, we flood quite a bit with tides and everything else. So when there's a lot of rain and there's a lot of tide with the supermoon we have going, who knows? But we do sometimes run into connection issues with these heavy storms. So I apologize in advance if anything like that were to happen today. But if you have any problems, just drop that in the chat panel and let me know that. So that's about it as far as kind of our housekeeping. We're excited to kind of dive in and just spend the next 45 minutes or so really taking a look at who this Millennial Traveler is, who they are. We want to understand that first and foremost. That's the key to really being able to market to them, is understanding this customer. And then what are their expectations? How do we address those expectations and try to have a little bit of fun as we talk about that? And then how do we reach them? So those are kind of the three big things we're going to hit on, the three big themes we're going to hit on today, and then kind of bring that conversation together for you. So before we move into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what does Q4Launch know about millennials. I talked about our passion for travel, but our team, and this is very intentional when we look at hiring and the breadth of experience that we have, our team ranges in ages from 22 to 56. We have 25 people on our team and are blessed by a wide range of perspectives from 22 to 56 as far as years old on the team. But the majority of our team being around 30 years old or under 30 years old. So when we look at kind of the composition of our team, we have a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different age ranges, which we think makes us much stronger as a company because we have all that we bring to the table. So we're looking at marketing challenges and looking at everything we're doing through the lens of different generations and how they respond and react and everything else. So that's cool. I talked a lot about the fact that we're obsessed with travel. As a team, we've traveled to 6 continents, and I don't know, I've lost track of how many countries at this point. We had that up on our website, and it probably is still there. It needs updated, though, as we've a lot of us have traveled quite a bit more, and then a lot of us, we have a lot of new team members that have joined the team since we published that stat as well. So excited to be able to have that going on as well. And then the last piece there, and then that's yours truly, our founder is a millennial. Q4Launch was founded by me 7 years ago. About three and a half years ago, we focused exclusively into the travel space. And those of you who know me from conferences and so forth get a, you know, everybody doesn't believe me when I say I'm a millennial, but I am in this generation of millennials. Sometimes we have some fun with that, and lots of jokes made about that. But at the core, we're led by millennials. A lot of the core values of who is the millennial, we've actually incorporated a lot of those things into our company culture. So it's a really fun thing, and I'm not living in my parents' basement, though, which is one of the things that's still associated with a lot of millennials. So that's some good news as we look at you know, companies and who millennials are. Not all of us still live in our parents' basement. But I think that's one of the misconceptions, actually, about millennials that kind of gives them a bad rap. And we're going to talk about that a little bit as we move throughout our time together today. So with that, let's dive in and let's start our conversation about who is the Millennial Traveler. We're going to have several kind of slides. We have a lot of slides, a lot more slides than we usually have in our presentations, but we're going to kind of talk through these things independently and really look at who this person is. Let's get an understanding of what makes them tick. The first thing you see there is that experiences and relationships are more important than possessions. And this is probably one of the most widely heard things you've said about millennials. If you've studied them before, this is probably something that is kind of come to your attention. We love this information because this is great news for us in the travel space. As we look at the overall percentage of income that gets spent on travel, that's discretionary income, the fact that experiences relationships are more important than possessions is really important for us because it gives us the opportunity as a travel industry to create and provide experiences for these travelers, for these millennials that will attract them to our properties. And that's something we're going to talk a lot about as we move throughout our time together here, creating that experience, marketing that experience. The other important thing here is this relationship aspects. They define relationships very differently than previous generations have defined relationships. Many of you probably look at how they define relationships and kind of get a chuckle out of it, with so much of it being digital, so much of it being web-based, so much of it being and oftentimes very shallow. But at the same point, relationships, family, all of those things are very important to them, and they emphasize those things over possessions time and time again. We see that in behavior, we see that in their spending patterns, and it's a great news for us as a travel industry as a whole. That also means some other things for us. If relationships are more important to them, they're going to spend less time at work, more time with friends. They're not going to be chasing the American dream quite as hard. We're going to talk about that as we talk about their redefining the American dream. But they're also traveling together in groups more than any generation before them has, which that's great news for those of us that cater to group travel, the vacation rental industry, boutique hotels, small properties that really create experiences around group travel. It can also present some challenges because when they travel as groups, they can tend to kind of take over a space. So you've got to kind of be thinking about that as well. If you've ever hosted a wedding party in your properties, you kind of know how that can go from taking over a space. But very relational, very loyal a lot of times as well. When they really kind of latch on to a brand and get excited about a brand, they can be very loyal, which is great for us. We also see there that they're more concerned with culture than previous generations. And I kind of put those quotes around culture because it means a lot of things and it's defined very loosely. But it's all about, it ties back to that experience. They want to go and they want to have that experience. Oftentimes they want to kind of push against that traditional tourism experience. So what you've thought about tourism in the past, there's kind of a negative persona for many millennials when it comes to travel about this whole idea of being a tourist. They want to embrace themselves into the culture, and that's another piece of great news for us in the independent section of lodging, because those of us that are embracing ourselves in the culture, we're creating that cultural experience. We're not the Marriotts of the world that have this cookie-cutter experience, and we see that trying to be imitated by many of the big brands out there that are trying to create these micro brands or these boutique brands to capture this part of the segment. So as we're looking at that, I think the people that we interact with, the people that are on this call, are uniquely positioned. You are uniquely positioned to market to attract this type of traveler because of your boutique nature, your custom nature, your cultural nature. And you need to tell that story as part of your marketing. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we get to the marketing section of our conversation. And then the next one there, and this is really important because this I think is one of those misconceptions we talked about earlier. I mentioned that I don't live in my parents' basement, which is good for me and good for them, especially in Charleston because none of us have basements, so I don't know where exactly I would be, but they're entering their higher earning years. And as they do that, they're having more money to spend on travel. We'll talk about that as well. But this misconception that they are poor, that they don't have money to spend, yada, 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 is really changing because as a generation, they're coming out of their teenage years and they're coming into their higher earning years. And it's an important demographic for us to be thinking about and attracting for the coming years for the viability of the future of our business. And then that redefining of the American dream. The American dream, as it's traditionally been known, is the house on the hill with the 2 kids and the dog and that whole experience. For them, and it ties back to that possessions thing, their perspective of that American dream. Because of the housing crisis we went through and many millennials were starting their careers in college, coming out of college through that chase of that American dream has kind of been shattered for them as many people before knew it. It's not about building value in a home. It's not about building retirement accounts. It's about living a little bit more in the now, in the here and now, and experiencing that. And that American dream for them is often really the pursuit of this work-life balance concept, and that they don't want to work 60 hours a week like their parents have. They don't want to be the misers with their money like maybe their grandparents who came through the Depression generation, that they might have done. So we're seeing them spend a much higher percentage of income on discretionary activity. They're tending to rent more than buy as just a general rule. Of course, there are exceptions within this, and their definition of the American dream is really changing. And that's also a good thing for us in the travel space. They're investing into those relationships, they're investing into those experiences, and they provide a tremendous amount of value on those things. With that, we kind of dive a little bit deeper here, but this is also something, so we're obviously excited about Millennial Travelers because of all the things that tie back to the travel industry, but as a generation, they have a passion for travel. If you talk to an average millennial, and they're staying single for longer as well, they're not getting married as early, but if you talk to one who is married and you ask them about their honeymoon experience, chances are they've gone to a rather exotic and far away from home destination for their honeymoon. Many of them are also kind of, well, not many, but some of them are also embracing this idea of a buddy moon, where instead of going off together, and this speaks to their desire for community, their idea of their honeymoon is they take all their friends with them, and they have a buddy moon, which is an interesting idea. But the point I was trying to make here is they're spending more on travel. They see the world as their playground. They have a passion for travel, and they're going exotic destinations for their honeymoon more than generations before. My parents went to a state park for their honeymoon. It was about 2 hours from home, and that was great for them, and that was a neat experience. My wife and I went to the Dominican Republic and spent a week on the beach in Punta Cana. So it's just a very different experience, and you see that trend throughout the millennial generation much more so. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that world is a playground type thing. They've grown up with the internet at their fingertips. They've grown up with the ability to see the world at any given moment via digital media. They don't have to look up the Dominican Republic in an encyclopedia. They can Google it. It's popping up in their Facebook feed. Pictures are popping up on Instagram or on Pinterest, and they're seeing these experiences. And by seeing these experiences, they're wanting to have these experiences themselves. And with the availability of travel now, with airfare and everything else being very financially feasible for people, it's not a luxury anymore. It's very attainable for most people who are working professionally. It gives them the opportunity to go and see destinations. I mean, traditionally, boomers are more of a drive market destination. We're seeing millennials use air travel even for weekend getaways. I mean, they'll fly in on a Friday, they'll fly out on a Sunday, and they'll make a weekend getaway out of something that previously would have been a drive market. So we're seeing some growth in that as well in some specific markets throughout the U.S. The challenge with this, and it's challenging on a domestic level, it's an opportunity on an international level, but the challenge with that world as a playground thing is you're not just competing against people in your town anymore. You're competing against resorts in Punta Cana and all these different people as you're trying to attract that honeymoon traveler. And that's just one segment, of course, but if you're thinking about attracting travelers, your competition is a bit bigger because the world has gotten smaller. So that's an interesting thing to be thinking about. It means we've got to get a little bit more intelligent and expand our scope on who we're thinking about our competition as. That stat there as well, I kind of referenced that they're coming into their higher earning years. With some research that we did and saw was that the Millennial Traveler spends on average $197 per day on travel. And as we look at how that breaks down amongst generations, that's second only to employed baby boomers. So baby boomers who are retired or unemployed are spending less than that. Baby boomers who are employed, who are in their premium earning years, their highest peak earning years, are outspending millennials. But second to those, millennials are outspending everyone else. And as a percentage of income, they are spending more than anyone else. So as you look at that, it's a really important thing, because if millennials have made all these other things a reality, they have a passion for travel, they see the world as a playground, they invest in experiences and relationships, as their income grows, if they continue to spend that same percentage of their income on travel, it's going to grow significantly, the amount of money, the amount per day they're spending on travel as well. I was just traveling with some friends last year, actually. At the end of the year, we were traveling as a group, and it's a group of young professionals, and I was just kind of, I tend to pick my friends' brains a lot about travel and their experiences, and I was like, hey, we're on a trip, what a perfect time. And last year, we had taken that same trip, but we had gone camping. And this year, we were taking that trip, but we were staying at a nice boutique hotel just south of Asheville, spending about $225 a night. And I was just trying to get an idea for them, hey, what's changed for you this year we're taking this trip versus last year? And for them, what had changed, the answer across the board of what had changed was, well, I got a raise this year, so I've got more opportunity, I've got more budget, I've got more to spend, and I want to invest in that luxury experience. And that was my assumption. That's why I asked the question. But that affirmation for me was really, really important, because it told me that, yeah, this is true. As their income is increasing, their expectation is going to increase. What they want out of this is going to increase. And they're investing that paid time off that they get from their employers very carefully. And they want a luxury type experience when they're doing that in many cases. Sometimes because of the rise of Airbnb, many people say, oh, they're the crash on your friend's couch generation. And I would say that's really not true. Yes, there are people that's what they want. But when they're looked at that limited time off, they want to make the most out of the time they have, and they're going to jam-pack that. They're a busy generation for the most part. They move very quickly, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and some of their expectations later on. But the key takeaway of all of this that we've really talked about so far is these trends that we've talked about tells us that this is worth investing in. We need to invest in reaching the millennials, both for today's income, because they have money to spend, but more importantly for the future of our businesses, because their percentage of income on travel is going to hopefully stay the same as their incomes increase. So as a part of the overall travel market, the dollar amount they're spending is going to grow, and we believe that's going to drive growth in the travel industry in the coming years, and why one of the reasons as a company we are so heavily invested and exclusively in the travel space, and then driving change and driving things to drive that growth in the space that benefits everybody. A couple other things about the Millennial Traveler. We've got a great stock photo here of some millennials. Don't they look like they're having a good time? And we wanted to kind of, we talked a little bit about this, but they're traveling in groups more than prior generations. So as properties, as we're thinking about marketing them, we need to be thinking about that stat through some of the ways we position ourselves and some of the ways we position our marketing. We're going to give you some ideas around that in the marketing section of our conversation. They're also traveling around cultural and local events. So they're not just looking for a destination, they're looking for an experience. So we have to make sure we're telling that story. We're marketing that experience and telling them what's going on. We're going to talk quite a bit about that later on. So we'll kind of move past that one. And then that last item here, I talked a little bit about, briefly mentioned, there's a bit of a generation of now. Like they're very much into what's happening now and not so much planning for the future. Which is not necessarily always a good thing. But for them, you know, we've kind of, one of the movies or books, I don't remember, I know there was a movie, but there may have been a book as well, made this whole bucket list idea kind of go mainstream a few years ago and become a common part of our language. But their bucket list is happening now. So you talk to people about dreams they have, maybe you talk to boomers about dreams they have, and it's when they retire, I want to do X. For the millennials, it's not when I retire. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about now. They're thinking about, my bucket list is going to happen now. These are the things I want to do now. These are the things I want to do this year They're not talking about when they retire. They're not talking about that. I mean, that's a far-off thing for them. And unfortunately, that has some negative, I think, implications as far as this generation goes for long-term planning and some of those things that will hopefully not blow up in their face when they get to the retirement part of life. But for now, it's a huge opportunity because if you can create some of that bucket list mentality in your marketing, you can attract this group of travelers and help them have that bucket list type experience that they're going after. Awesome. And then this is the last thing I want to hone in on here. And I think this, for me, comes out of this misconception that millennials are not great guests. And I think this came to reality for me. My wife and I, and actually a group of friends, there we go, traveling in groups again. We went to New Zealand in April of this year, spent 2 weeks there, had a tremendous time, did some work while we were there, saw some places and so forth. But one of the experiences we had, our last 2 or 3 days in New Zealand, we went to a little B&B on the coast with views of the water, walk right down to the beach, absolutely gorgeous. We booked that experience online with never really talking to those innkeepers before we booked it, which is always interesting. When I'm booking things, I'm kind of using that as a case study at the same time to learn about that process. But when we booked that, we arrived, and the innkeepers were very weary of this group of young people who had arrived to stay at their B&B. Now, keep in mind, one of the guys on the trip, well, 2 of the people on the trip now are pastors at a church. I'm a young professional with a growing company with employees that report to me, but it was like we were immediately viewed as like this poison that had just infiltrated this B&B, which was interesting to me, as many friends as we have in that space and as much work as we do there. But there was definitely this negative persona, and we could sense that, and it was interesting seeing the people in the group kind of talk about that. Unfortunately, the way that they approached us as a group of millennials had a negative impact for that industry as a whole because of the way we were received. But when we were checking out, amidst several awkward conversations that had perceived over the next 2 to 3 days with the innkeepers, one of the comments they made was they were talking to other guests about us, which that alone is a faux pas to tell your guests, oh, I was talking to other guests about you. Okay, well, thanks. I appreciate doing that. And I'm sure none of you would make that mistake. But we were talking to other guests about you, and we were amazed at how great of guests you were. And I was like, okay, so you just basically told me that you thought we were going to be terrible guests and did not want us to stay here. And it was just this real awkward exchange, but they did a terrible job of, 1, making us feel welcome, and 2, helping us to know that we were great guests there. And again, it was that type of experience. I mean, it was not an inexpensive experience by any stretch of the imagination. But we had invested in having the last 3 days at this beautiful place right on the coast, and really wanted to be a great experience. And I left a little disappointed, a little frustrated with us as an industry as a whole because of the way, because of some of the misconceptions that people have about millennials and the way we treat them as a result. Now, I know in the vacation rental space, many of you, and the same is true in the boutique lodging side of the space, but many of you have been burned by groups coming in and possibly trashing your property. And I know that exists. I know that happens. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't. What I'm trying to say is let's not just kind of write this group off because they're young, crazy partiers. Like, there are some absolutely great guests in this group of people. 99% of them are absolutely great guests, just like any group of guests, any generation. There are some outliers that are a bit crazy, and you got to kind of filter that out. Yeah, you probably don't want to be hosting bachelor parties at your property. Totally get that. But don't kind of discount this group as a whole because of the preconceived notions you think about them. We talk a lot on webinars, and we teach a lot about misconceptions and not letting your misconceptions hurt your business. And this is one of those misconceptions that we see hurting a lot of people's business. So make sure when you're thinking about them, you welcome them with open arms and really create experiences and create opportunities for them to interact and become loyal guests. They have a lot of traveling years ahead of them, and they love to tell everybody about their great experiences. So these are great guests for you to have as raving fans. They're not great guests for you to have as your enemies because they do love to tell everything on social media. So as we talked about that, that's kind of a profile on who they are. Hopefully we have a good idea on a little picture of them. Let's dive in and talk about their expectations a little bit. I'm going to move a little bit quicker through this, but they grew up in the digital age. You know, this selfie idea, there's songs about selfies and everything else nowadays, but it's very much what's going on. And as such, their expectation of you is that your technology would be up to date. Not just your technology on the web, which we're going to talk about, but your technology at your properties as well. You need to think about this digital age and make sure you have convenient charging ports. If you have a check-in desk or an office where people come, and if they're going to spend any period of time there, Why not have a charging station right there? You know they have just traveled some distance to get to you, so there is a high likelihood that their mobile devices are going to be low on battery when they get there. Why not, while they're sitting there, hopefully they're not there long, but offer them, hey, here's a charging station if you need to plug anything in real quick. Free Wi-Fi is a huge thing. They love Wi-Fi. They are a connected generation. They want to stay connected all of the time. This is one of the things I hate about the kind of the modern generation we're in, because I like to disconnect, but it's really hard. When you're doing all these things, there's a lot going on, and it's hard to disconnect all the time. And then the next thing there is they want to communicate electronically, and this kind of goes together with the fact that they hate talking on the phone. But that's a big deal, because so many apps and everything else are making it so easy for people to communicate electronically. Yet for us as an independent part of the lodging industry, we aren't quite keeping up to speed with some of that technology. But as we look at that with Airbnb and their app and so many other things, so much is going electronically. I was talking to some friends a couple weeks ago at dinner, and one of them was talking about having to call somebody on the phone. I think it was like a utility company or something, and she said, "I hate talking on the phone." And it was kind of this aha moment for me, and it was like, absolutely, this is why text messaging has grown so dramatically and why it's become such a problem on the roads. But the answer is because they hate talking on the phone. They just want to get that instant gratification, send a quick little message, really short characters, really short attention spans, and they want to do that electronically. So as you're thinking about your guests and how do you impact that, what does that mean to them, be thinking about that and the fact that they probably don't want to pick up the phone and call you and have a 15-minute conversation. And if you're moving quickly and you're in a business that's getting a lot of reservations, you got a lot going on, especially in your peak seasons, you don't really want to be talking to them on the phone either. So it's a tremendous opportunity to look for ways to put app communication as well as text message communication into your process. If you guys haven't thought about using text message to communicate with your guests, I would absolutely encourage you to do that, because your millennial guests specifically will embrace that much more than you calling them. They can talk to you while they're at work quickly and easily, where they wouldn't want to talk to you when their employer is right there. So you'll get a lot more done a lot quicker, and they want a quick response. I was just speaking at a conference in Key West. Had a great opportunity to stay at a Waldorf property down there, right in Key West. Beautiful property, and I saw them marketing this digital concierge they have. So I decided, hey, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to figure out what's going on. So they texted me after check-in, about 3-4 hours after check-in, and said, hey, thanks for coming. How's your experience so far? 0 out of 10. And I don't know if the whole system broke down or what, but so got that text. That was great. Didn't respond, interestingly enough, but noticed that I got it. That night, as I was going to bed, I got another text and just said, hey, we hope you had a great day. If there's anything we can do to help you plan your trip tomorrow, or plan your day tomorrow, we'd love to know what we can do to help. So I sent a text back immediately. My colleague and I were thinking about how do we sneak something fun in before this conference really starts tomorrow morning. I was like, maybe we can hit a snorkeling trip, jet ski, whatever. So I sent a text back and just like, hey, what's the earliest snorkeling trip in the morning? I sent that text at like 11:30 p.m., kind of cashing out. Didn't really expect a response, and I didn't get one. But by the next morning, I really expected a response, right? By 8:30, 9 a.m., I thought I'd get a response. Never got a response. I sent another text to it. Still never got a response. So this is a time where this whole idea broke down, where I think they had a great idea. This digital concierge, shoot us a text, will help you out, but the execution of it failed poorly, or failed miserably. So you've got to be thinking about that too. If you're going to introduce this, if you're going to market this as a resource for your guests, you got to realize what you're opening up, that you're opening up 24/7 communication via text message, because they will text you in the middle of the night where they probably wouldn't call you in the middle of the night, and that's fine. They don't expect an immediate response. You can respond in the morning. But make sure you're committed to maintaining that communication medium, because it works. It's worse for you if you offer it and don't respond than if you had never offered it in the first place. So as we're looking at that, I want to really encourage you to be thinking about how do you communicate differently with your guests and open up different mediums that might make you more attractive than some of the traditional mediums of email and phone call. So here we go with a little bit more about their expectations. Your online presence had better be top-notch. They will absolutely judge you and make a booking decision based on the quality of your website, your photography, and that overall experience. Again, they don't want to call you. So while past generations, boomers may call you and you have the opportunity to build rapport and wow them and make them experience, your charming personality. This generation won't do that. This generation won't give you that opportunity, so you have to think about, how do I take my warm, wow personality and make that digital? How do I reach out to people and make sure that when they see my website, when they're interacting with me in the digital world, and this goes across everything you're doing, and one of the reasons we encourage an integrated marketing strategy so heavily, but as you're thinking about that, you've got to make sure you're getting that message and you're sharing that brand across your entire web presence, your website, but also your integrated marketing that goes throughout the web. Really take a hard look at how does your online presence, and this is here while we're talking about online presence, not website. Website is a part of your bigger online presence, but how does it compare to your competitors? What does that experience look like? Does it feel like what you think a millennial wants it to feel like? Or does it feel out of date? Does it feel like you're kind of not really with the times? Because of the pace technology has moved, and because this generation has grown up with that, they expect you to be keeping your technology up to par with that. And they absolutely show preference for those that do and create that experience for them. And not only how does your online presence compare to your competitors, people you would think of as a direct competitor, but how does it compare to the hotels you might be competing with? How does it compare to Airbnb? Yeah, you don't have the $15 billion valuation or whatever to be able to invest in an app and technology and everything else, but what's that like? How do you create an experience that's as close to that as you can without trying to spend that kind of money? And then also very important, and this ties back to what we talked about at the beginning, but does your online presence show the experience or just the property? If you are not marketing the experience, the destination, what's going to happen, all those things, and you're still just marketing your property, you are absolutely missing the boat from a marketing perspective, not just reaching millennials, but reaching everybody. People aren't just booking properties, they're booking experiences. And that they're doing a lot of research. They spend a lot of time researching these vacations, and you have to tell that story. When people are Googling things to do in your city, your destination, they need to be finding you. They need to be finding you and you providing that information through a great content marketing or blogging strategy. And that goes back to your online presence, really showcasing that overall experience, not just the property. So we're going to look at some examples of some places that have done that well here in a few minutes. But you also need to have a great mobile experience as a part of this online presence. And we're going to show you some sample data, pull just some real quick sample data on 16 of our customers. But as we look at this, and this trend is growing every year for the last, 5 years, maybe more, and this trend has stayed the same. But desktop traffic is down by 11% this year to date versus 2014 amongst this segment of our customer base, which we see pretty universal throughout. You see little pockets that vary a little bit, but this is pretty good averages. So in 2014, 63% of all of our customer traffic was desktop. In 2015, that's 53% with some rounding. The actual numbers are about 11%, rounded those off to see 10 there. At the same time, mobile traffic is up by that 11%. So that mix there, the desktop is down, mobile has gone up, and tablet traffic is down 1%. It's actually a little bit less than 1%, but when we round off, it's down from 17 to 16%. So it's essentially stayed the same, and 11% or 10 or so percent traffic has migrated from desktop to mobile. So that's a really important thing because you have to have a good mobile experience. The whole booking thing is transitioning quite a bit. There, a lot of times people used to say, oh, they don't want to put credit cards in, yada, yada, yada. That's even getting easier with the phone technology getting smarter and catching up. So lots of reasons you need to make sure you have a great mobile experience. But as we look at this data and kind of summarize it, almost half of all searches are not taking place on a desktop. Almost half of the traffic to your website is on another device other than a laptop. And if you haven't thought about that in your web design and your marketing strategy, you're not delivering the best experience you can to half of the people who are interacting with your brand. And of that half, I would say the millennials are a greater percentage of that because the older generations, the boomers and so forth, tend to need a bigger screen. Not to make an eyesight joke, but but they do. And nearly a third of all searches are taking place on a mobile phone. So that's a huge deal. You absolutely have to be investing in your mobile technology and what that looks like, and making sure from a booking perspective, from a property management perspective, that you're investing in that you're partnered with companies, that are investing in that mobile experience. So you can't change the way your booking engine or your property management system displays mobile. You can change your own website a bit in most cases, but you can't change that. So you have to, when you're choosing that vendor, you have to decide clearly that you're investing in someone who has a great mobile experience and that they're pushing that envelope. You may want to make sure you're partnered with companies that are pushing that envelope. And the companies we recommend in the space, that's how we choose our recommendation. Who is reinvesting in their product and making sure that they're at the cutting edge of technology. And a quick way for you to do this is to actually sit down and go through your mobile booking experience and make sure it's easy as a customer. Look at things from the outside in. Look at what your customer is looking at and actually go through your mobile booking experience, make sure it's easy. If it's not, connect with your property management system about how to make that easier. We recommend you do this. We also recommend you watch a friend do this. I would pick, maybe 6 people in different generations and say, hey, could you do me a favor? Could I watch you kind of go through our mobile booking experience? Don't coach them. You ruin the whole case study of your user experience study if you coach them. But just ask them. Ask them to go through the process and see what happens. This is something that's really powerful, and you'll have some aha moments oftentimes when you do this. This is kind of a funny thing here we wanted to throw in, but they don't want to stay at grandma's. So their expectation is they don't want to stay at grandma's. And this isn't meant to offend any grandmas, because I just told you how important their family is to them. But what we're trying to say here is they don't want where they're staying to look like grandma's. They are willing to invest in a higher end experience. And if you're not providing that higher end experience, you're going to miss out on this segment of the marketplace. They expect you to have updated finishes and furnishings. They expect things to look nice, clean, and new. It doesn't have to be ultra-modern. That's not what I'm saying. Yes, there are brands that works for, and that attracts a certain segment of the population. Absolutely, but don't hear that when I'm saying updated. Updated and modern are 2 different things. Modern is a design style. Updated is just you can carry things through. You can carry an arts and crafts style through, but doing it with an updated color palette and some of those types of things. It's time for the wallpaper to go. Wallpaper and floral patterns have a place in certain destinations, but for the most part, it's time for them to go, and then we kind of put that parenthesis in there. It's past time. Like, if we're still having this conversation, it's past time for them to go. Really need to be looking at those types of things and seeing, okay, what is this a major focal point in my property? If it is, we need to be updating those things, because if people see that, they're going to make that quick snap judgment. Again, they're moving very quickly in this digital age. They need to see something and have a great aesthetic experience. The aesthetic is important to them. And if they're investing that time off that they have, they want to be investing it well, and they're willing to spend that high percentage of their income to do so. So you've got to spend a little money. Pick an area and update those things. You've got to be investing into this to stay up with this generation. I would say this applies for everybody, but it specifically applies for the millennials that kind of see this as a big part of their overall travel experience. Next piece here is they expect to be entertained, and I don't mean that you need to actually gather them together and entertain them, although I know many innkeepers that do that and do a great job of it. But what they're looking for is the resources to entertain themselves. They're amazingly able to do so, but you've got to give them the resources to do that. That relationship piece I talked about, you need to create common areas for people to gather. This is really easy in a vacation rental, big living rooms, game tables, things like that. If you're a boutique property, you got to think about that a little bit differently. But fireplaces, big fireplaces in common areas are a huge attraction. Lots of people will gather around that. They love being outdoors, so that fire pit and using that fire pit to market that creates an emotional connection with them, and it ties back to that emotional, man, I would love to be there sitting around that fire pit, drinking a glass of whiskey or a cup of hot cider, and just talking with the people that are closest to me in my life, my friends, about what's going on in life, talking about whatever's going on, but also meeting new people. It's a great opportunity to meet new people around those kind of shared common areas. And there's lots of different ways you can do this, but outdoor living spaces. If you go to a restaurant, you see a huge growth right now in restaurants providing outdoor dining space because so many people want to be outdoors more. And they're really catering to that part of that customer, and they're spending a lot of money on outdoor dining spaces at restaurants. They get that people are looking for that experience. And when you're marketing your property, this is such a tremendous opportunity for you to tell that story. And you're not selling a room, you're selling this whole experience. So you need to be marketing that. And if you're going to invest money into properties, that's a great way to do it, by creating some great outdoor space that you can really create as a focal point of your overall marketing. and then wrap a lot of what you do from a marketing perspective around that asset that you've just spent money to develop. They like to stay busy. I talked about that a little bit, but you've got to provide them with activity. Like they don't, typically as a generation, they don't want to just sit. They move very quickly. They like to stay busy. They're not as into board games and puzzles as previous generations. Some of them still are, but interestingly, the activities that they're looking for are a little bit different. So you got to kind of break out of that traditional. I know a ton of places come stock with board games, but think about that a little differently. What other activities are there? You know, whether that's just even some free stuff, just developing walking tours, or we were in a meeting brainstorming marketing ideas for fall campaigns we're working on today, and the idea of movie tours came about. If you've got movies filmed in the area, you know, are you providing a tour of all the different places scenes were filmed? Lots of cool opportunities to help these people stay busy, stay connected. And did I mention they like Wi-Fi? They want to stay connected. They want to stay connected to what's going on at home, whether that's they want to watch their dog on the pup cam at the kennel that it's staying at, which is crazy. I love my dog, but I don't really care what she's doing at this given moment to look up a webcam about what she's doing, but so many people do. They'll pull up that webcam and check that out, because they want to stay connected to what's going on at home while they're away, both with their pets, but with their family and all their friends on social media, and they want to brag about the experience that they're having. They want everybody to think their life is so great, and they get a lot of fulfillment out of likes and shares and comments on their social feeds. Probably too much so. They want to be the star. They want to be the hero, which creates a lot of other interesting interpersonal dynamic stuff. But that's a conversation for another day. But they want to stay connected, and then you got to give them that free Wi-Fi to be able to do that. All right, how do you market to the millennial? With our time left today, we want to kind of dive into this and share some ideas. Shared a lot of stats, a lot of things, hopefully gave you some good perspective on who these people are, but let's dive in and talk about some ideas. And this is kind of been interwoven into our time together today, so you've heard me say a lot of these things already, but it's not just about the property anymore. You absolutely have to market your destination and the experience they're going to have. Even if your property is the experience and the destination, you still have to tell that story. So many of us just put up property photos or just put up room photos, and that's kind of what we think marketing is. But it's not. You've got to absolutely market your destination. We're going to show you some examples. They're spending money on creating memorable experiences, so help make that journey easier for them by creating packages and sharing that information through your blogs. It's such a tremendous resource to be able to tell that story and create that experience, and they will reward your efforts from a marketing perspective with that booking. That's what it's all about. And then tell the story of all there is to do. You know, we have a great property we work with in Saluda, North Carolina, and you've probably heard me use examples in the past if you've been on webinars, but the Orchard Inn, beautiful property in Saluda. I remember when I first started talking with Mark and Mary, and they were on a webinar we did 3 years ago. And they called me afterwards and said, hey, we love what you had to share. What can you do to help us market our inn in Saluda, North Carolina? I said, Saluda, where? Like, come on, like, where is this town? Like, I've never even heard of this. But I hadn't heard of it because the destination hadn't done a good job of marketing themselves. Or one of the examples I'm going to show you here in a minute. But through kind of working with them over the last several years, we've been able to create these experiences that they can tell their story. And there is so much to do in this little mountain town called Saluda that it's been a huge impact for their business to be able to start telling that story. It's not something about staying at the inn. That's great. That's important. But look at all the things to do. Tell the story of all the things there are to do while you're there. Cape Cod, we all know, is a great destination. But here's a great example of someone who's telling the story of what there is to do. That wrote this blog, Cape Cod Shark Adventures If You Dare. Doesn't that just get your adrenaline going a little bit as soon as you read that title? It did mine. I was excited to see this. But they wrote this blog, published it on their website, trying to communicate to their guests. Maybe the things are a little different than what they would typically do, but trying to attract traffic for people that are planning a trip to the Cape Cod area and have the opportunity to check this out. Now let's look at what this did for them. We have access to their analytics. So far this year to date, that blog alone has driven 1,827 visits to their website. So they have done a tremendous job of marketing that experience. And in marketing that experience, 1,827 people discovered this property that didn't know they existed before. So these are people specifically who are searching for information on Cape Cod Shark Adventures, and as a result, they found the Chatham Gable Inn. So beautiful opportunity of marketing the experience more so than just the property, and when you're doing that, you attract people to you that may not have known you existed before. Shoreline OBX, one of our great customers up in the Outer Banks area. Are you excited for the Outer Banks Marathon? I talked about the fact that these people tend to travel in groups and they travel around events. I'm a huge runner, biker, triathlete, mud run, kind of a junkie for all this stuff. And I, every year, usually plan 2 to 3 trips where I'll pick a race, and then I will encourage people to register for the race. I'll help them with ideas on training, and then I'll go book some experience based on how many people are going. We'll have anywhere from 6 to 20 people who I kind of rally around this event, which for me is athletics because that's what I'm passionate about. But for other people, it's food tours or wineries or whatever else. You kind of get that thing going. But Outer Banks is using the Outer Banks Marathon as an opportunity to, or excuse me, Shoreline is using the Outer Banks Marathon to use that as an opportunity to reach people who are coming to this and then put their vacation rentals in front of them and say, hey, if you're coming for the Outer Banks Marathon, if you're excited about it, we're excited about it too. Maybe here's some of our staff who's participating, and here's some of the great places you can stay and have a great experience with your friends when you do it. So tremendous opportunity to tell that story and create the experience. And this is a little bit more on creating that experience they can connect with. The North Carolina Adventure Vacation Package. Being an adventure junkie, sign me up right now. I have done all of these items on this list, and let me tell you, if you were looking for an adventure getaway, I would absolutely tell you to take this package because it's awesome. But this is where the Orchard did is taking a property in a small mountain town, and they're telling the story about what's going on in the area to really bring that home. So your adventure package includes the Gorge Zipline Canopy Adventure, Bigger Little Bradley Waterfall Rappel, kayaking on the Upper Green River, which if you don't know the Green River, Upper Green is like where the real rapids are. Then a bottle of red or white wine or a 6-pack of locally brewed Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada just opened a brewery up there. A picnic lunch. We've got some pricing in here, weekday pricing, weekend pricing. So awesome opportunity to drive some weekday bookings here with that lower rate. And then we're not just giving that to you, we're helping you visualize that here in the next little bit. We're showing you what the Gorge Zipline Canopy Adventure looks like. We're showing you what the waterfall rappel looks like. How crazy is that? Who doesn't want to sign up for that? I know that might be a bit small on all screens, but you can go there and check it out. And then we're kind of giving you that visual on kayaking the Upper Green River. So we're marketing this experience, and when you're coming for this experience, we're helping set all this up for you, right? I mean, we're giving you the ultimate getaway adventure package, and we're taking care of everything. We've set it all up for you. This is bringing people to that destination. It's bringing people to that property to see what they could be taking on while they're there. So as we look at that, I'm going to keep moving pretty quick here to kind of hit our time together, but you have to engage them visually as well. They are such a visual generation. Think about the fact that social media has become such a visual medium, knowing that it's become very visual. Your website, your marketing also needs to be very visual. It's said that millennials have the attention span shorter than a goldfish, which is kind of funny. I don't know if that's actually true. I saw that in my research, but I couldn't tell the way it was positioned in this study if that was actually a fact they were trying to claim or if it was just a joke they were trying to make. But that's, I mean, to some degree, it's true. They have a very short attention span. They move very, very quickly, and you have to engage them visually in your marketing. You have to have great photos, not just of your properties or rooms, but of the area as a whole, because you're telling that story of your area as a whole. You're marketing that entire destination. It's more work to market like this because you have to learn about things you didn't know. You have to do a lot more research, but the results are very, very powerful. And you've got to be authentic. One of the things I love about all the money Airbnb is pouring into marketing right now is they're mainstreaming this idea of hosts. As the independent segment of the lodging industry, we get this part of it. We get this idea or this role of host better than anybody. We've been doing this for years. We've just gotten away from marketing it a little bit. So you have to absolutely tell the story of your hosts and really kind of wrap that in, because that's that authentic experience that millennials are looking for when they travel. They want to connect with locals. They don't want to be a tourist. They want to be kind of that local experience and that local expert. So be authentic in your marketing. Be very transparent. Don't try to come off as something that you're not. Don't try to come off as corporate or anything like that, but just tell that story and be very authentic in doing that. But as you do that, don't let American Gothic be the photo of yourselves you publish on your website. I've seen so many properties who have tried this and executed it very, very poorly. If you're going to post a picture of you, maybe smile. Like, I'm just throwing that out as an idea, but you should be amazed how many people take a picture like this and they don't smile. And when they don't smile, this actually works against you because, like, ooh, I don't want to go stay with those people. They look scary. Like, is he going to come pitchfork me in the middle of the night? So if you're going to do this and use it as a part of your strategy, you have to make this, you have to do it well. One of our customers out in Colorado shot a video of their staff, and They did this kind of all their staff answering the phones. They had all their like outdoor gear on, and it really made their staff, their host, part of their experience look fun and look like they weren't just selling you a vacation, but they were living that lifestyle. And they did a tremendous job with that, and really applaud them for that. But that's what we're talking about here. If you're going to take this road on, you've got to do it from an authentic nature and be very warm and welcoming in doing it, and have some fun with it. Like, if you've got something that you're iconic for, whether that's skiing or rappelling or whitewater rafting, maybe have some fun photos of you doing those activities. That ties this aspect of marketing the experience together with marketing yourself as a host. So tremendous opportunity there to really kind of tie those things together. And this is a really important concept. I kind of got it here in one of my last slides, but this is huge. And I wanted to spend a minute hanging out here, but all of your marketing, everything you publish, everything you do should be geared to the 35-year-old traveler, which is at the upper end of that millennial age range. You say, Matt, well, most of my customers aren't 35. Why would I be doing that? And the reason you should be doing that is because if you're marketing specifically to a 65-year-old traveler and a 35-year-old traveler sees that, they're going to be turned off by that. They're going to say, oh, that's what my grandparents would do, or that's what my parents would do. That's not what I do. But if you market to a 35 or a 45-year-old traveler, and your photography and your imagery and everything is wrapped around that, and a 60-year-old traveler sees that, they still think about themselves as being that age, so they're going to connect with that, and they're still going to be on board with that. A 35-year-old sees that, they're going to connect with that. A 20-year-old sees that, they're going to connect with that to a certain degree. So this medium road, or this middle road from an age range really helps all your demographics connect with it, as opposed to one demographic connect with it. Even if it's your biggest demographic, you're going to turn off a segment of your marketplace. You're really going to turn off your millennials that are seeing that marketing. I was really kind of heartbroken. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and an association had just spent all this money creating this video campaign to market the association and all the members as a whole. But all the people who starred in the video campaign had silver or white hair. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys just poured all this money into this, and you absolutely blew it. Yeah, I get the fact that the majority of people who are spending money with you meet that criteria. But if you could have used a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old in that video, you would have accomplished much, much more with the same budget, the same everything else. So as you're thinking about this, if you market towards the 35-year-old, you will not lose the 60-year-old, but if you market to that 60-year-old, you will likely lose the 35-year-old. So really think about that as you're making decisions about your marketing as a whole. So I know I've moved through a lot of information. If you've been with us on webinars before, you know I tend to talk fast. I try to slow it down a bit today. After a few of you poked fun of me on the last webinar we did, I made some coffee jokes there. I've actually been off coffee for a couple weeks. But so what are your next steps? We've talked about a lot of information. I've tried to go slow, but get it all in. So what are your next steps? You know, if you've been with us before, that we're very much a fan of the next steps. We want to educate you, but we also want to help you take action. Ideas without action are worthless. That's one of our core values, said a little differently, but it's one of our core values. Make ideas happen. So we want to help you take that next step. So if that's where you're at, here's a great next step for you to do. With so many millennials on our team, we have the opportunity to provide for you a free millennial marketing review. One of the millennials on our team will just go through your website, they'll go through your marketing, they'll go through everything you're presenting to the marketplace. They'll give you that outside-in perspective. And they will actually kind of go through and help you understand some things you're not doing well, some areas for improvement, and then give you some clear action items on what you might be able to do to attract more millennials. This is something we give away totally free of charge, absolutely complimentary, because we believe if you're doing a better job of marketing to the 35-year-old, it will help all of us as an industry, and it will remove some of those experiences where I talked about earlier in New Zealand, where I was really turned off by that whole experience of those innkeepers. Now, I know the industry, I love the industry, so it's not going to negatively affect me, but it absolutely had a negative effect on the people in our party, and it would make them think twice before going and staying in another B&B, which is really disappointing for that segment of the market. So tremendous opportunity to take advantage of this. Just, again, something we're giving away for free because we believe it will help you do your jobs better. With that, we've got about 5 minutes left for Q&A. Be happy to answer some questions. You can use the chat panel again to give any questions that you have, and we'll take an opportunity to kind of dive into that. So let's see what questions we have. I have a comment here. Are you gauging the industry on one experience in New Zealand? Innkeepers are not cast in the same mold. Thanks, Mary Jane, for that comment. Absolutely not. I was just using that example to say, hey, don't fall into this trap. Like, don't go down that road. I know innkeepers very intimately and have a ton of them as very close friends. So it's absolutely not casting that again across the whole industry. Just trying to make the point about embracing this age demographic. Question from Paula: why do they hate talking on the phone? Great question, Paula. I don't know why they hate talking on the phone. I think part of it is the ability to be able to do things on the fly at work and wherever else. They want to be able to do things very quickly. They move from thing to thing very quickly, so they want to just have that quick experience, that quick interaction, and move on. They're kind of, the whole social media thing is taking all communication to a digital place, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I don't understand all the psychographic and all that going on behind why they don't want to do it. It's just an observation about this generation as a whole. So big deal, big opportunity there. Another comment from Paula about some winemaking, blending, branding classes at a boutique hotel here in Charleston that she had just experienced. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Paula, as well. A question here from Heather, or maybe a comment. We find that with the shift to mobile, people are finding us on their phone, but calling to check availability or book because it's too tedious to fill out a mobile booking form. And yes, it's streamlined. Comments. That's great. I think you're going to see that less and less in the coming years as technology gets better and better. I think they're just going to go ahead and check availability. But if they're telling you it's too tedious, then I would say that is evidence that it's not as streamlined as it maybe should be or could be, or they would just be doing that there. There are a lot of people who are calling you, but I would bet that there's also a lot of people who don't take the time to call you. They just go to another website that might have a better mobile booking experience. So another thing is looking at maybe some simplification of forms. It's just an opportunity there to be thinking about. All right, let's see what other questions do we have here. Talking on the phone, we love multitasking. Not sure, Stephanie, what you mean quite by that comment, but I guess millennials as a whole love multitasking, so that very well may be why they don't want to talk on the phone. Okay, yeah, now I think I'm with you. They don't want to talk on the phone because they love multitasking. Very good point, Stephanie, and that's a big part of it. I absolutely agree with that. They love multitasking. Question here from Mary Jane. If millennials do not like to talk on the phone, what type of pre-visit contact were you expecting before your visit to New Zealand? I don't even need pre-visit contact, honestly. A confirmation that my booking was there, which I got, which was automated from their booking engine, that's fine. That's all I need. It was the way the whole thing was received that made that New Zealand experience a bit weird, and that we were kind of being treated like they thought poorly of us because of our age. So that's really what we're talking about there. Question from Christy: what is the age range of a millennial? Great question, Christy. Should have hit on that in my stats there. Typically, there's a little bit of debate about this, but typically millennials were born between 1980 and 2000. So born between 1980 and 2000 means that they're between roughly 15 and 35 years old. You'll see that you'll see that date range quite a bit if you're doing research, but you'll also see a lot of people say they're between 18 and 35. So a little bit of a difference there. But for the most part, right there, 18 to 35 today, or they were born between 1980 and 2000. So a pretty big range of years there, and quite a few people. So I think we've pushed through all the questions we have in the chat panel so far. We've got just a couple minutes left. If you have any more questions, we'd be happy to answer those. Go ahead and drop those in the chat panel, and we will get those answered for you. Thanks, everybody, for attending as well. I'm happy to stick around and answer a few questions if they pop up. But thank you for attending. We'll be sending out an email afterwards with an opportunity to follow up on that Millennial Marketing Review that we talked about. So check your email for that. Be looking for that, and we'll be happy to address that with you. So we've got a raised hand in the area. If you raised your hand, try putting a question in the chat panel. That might work better for you than just raising your hand. But happy to answer your question. So feel free to pop that in there. Again, if there's any other questions, be happy to stick around and answer those for you. Otherwise, we'll see you on a future webinar. Thanks, everybody, for your attendance.